Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, The Grimm Reader, and these are the Grimm Chronicles, where I tell you about my weekly reading. This is episode 26 for 2022. So I decided to participate in Jane Austen July, so my reading has changed a little bit because of that, and I'll get to that after I talk about the non-Jane Austen reading. And I did finally finish my wonderful short novel Friends and Relations by Elizabeth Bowen, an Anglo-Irish writer, so British and Irish, from the 20th century. And I was kind of looking at, there is an Elizabeth Bowen Society, which is a nice thing to have if you're a writer, and I'm going to look up the bibliography. So this is not considered her strongest work. It is very good. It was a 5-star read for me. And let me speak a little bit as to my reasons. I guess a lot of it had to do with just being kind of surprised at how good it was. I wasn't expecting it to be that good. And the reason I thought it was very good is the way her style, her sort of, it's not exactly stream of consciousness, but it's going in that direction. It's kind of a modernist style. And I'm sorry to be not looking at the camera. I'm trying to look for one example to read you. I've been trying to look for good examples to read you, and I never have been able to find a good one. It's just, here's one example that is sort of, it kind of gets to where I'm trying to, what I like about her style. I mean, I just like the reading of it. It's a style where the plot is sort of almost in the background, if that makes sense. So you read the sentences and you enjoy the sentences, and of course there is plot and there are things happening, actually kind of interesting things, but it's almost like the stringing together of the wonderful sentences and the wonderful words and the way they make you think about everything is what pulls you along more than the characterization or what's happening. At least for me, that was my experience, and I kind of really enjoy those books. I don't know why. It's just me. I mean, as I've said many, many times, Blood Meridian, this strange, very violent novel, I was really kind of, it was a thread of being pulled along by the wonderful prose, you know, and so that's just me. So let me just read this out, this little example of the prose that I like. So this is a kind of, how should we say, it's not a quarrel, but it's a tense discussion between these two people. And it says here, why? So this is just a quote. It won't mean much to you, but I'll just read it out because it's the beginning of the paragraph. "Why should I think you should want to annoy me?" returned Edward coldly. Feeling his way from switch to switch, he turned on all the lights. He blinked. The darkness gone from the room seemed to inhabit him. Looking back at the moment afterwards, he seemed to himself to have suffered some distortion and to have thought of her as inflicting this. Standing back from the sofa, her implacable face, with the downcast eyes, his mark, he began, "If you ever cared for him." Janet looked up. So you kind of see what's happening. We see that there is plot happening there, you know, and I'm not going to sort of summarize it. But what's interesting is the whole playing around with the metaphor of darkness and light, and how the darkness of the room kind of seems to inhabit him. And so I remember in my previous chats about this book, I had talked about, for lack of a better term, it's not a very good term, it's clunky, the way that she describes external space almost as if it were human, so the anthropomorphizing of space. But there's an interesting shift as the sort of the bit of plot that there is kind of comes into the foreground in the later chapters, later pages. That doesn't happen as much anymore, or at least I wasn't aware of it as much. And it's almost as if, because now you get to sort of see the characters interacting more and doing more, and so the description of space recedes, or it's probably still there, but it's not as foregrounded as much because more stuff is happening. People are moving around more in space, you know, and it's sort of still in an interesting way, but it's as if it's moved from the spaces themselves and the rooms themselves, or even the houses or gardens, to the people in these spaces, and which is really interesting. So I thought it was excellent. This is her third novel from 1931, and I have pulled up her list of works. So there's 10 novels for spanning a long time, 1927 through 1968, so decades. But then also many short stories, which I'm looking forward to getting into, and also a lot of nonfiction. So she wrote about her own childhood, so autobiography. She wrote a book about Anthony Trollope, one of my favorites. I'm excited. New Judgment, it's called. And then a lot of stuff about kind of mid-century chats about writing, and also her war work. She did some kind of not espionage exactly, but maybe sort of for England, and also kind of stuff about being Irish too. A really interesting writer, great find. I am excited to have found a new favorite. So that's that. Now, I last week said I was starting A King Alone by Jean Giono, and I'm putting that off because of Jane Austen July. And poor ETA Hoffmann is languishing there, the fairy tale, which for some reason I'm not being drawn to continue reading. I keep saying I will, and of course I will at some point, but I don't know when. I'm kind of putting it aside for now, I think. And let's see. I remember at some point before I went to Germany, I downloaded all of Gerald Murnane, so this Australian writer that was having a moment on BookTube at a certain sort of area of BookTube where people read people like Gerald Murnane, Paperbird, etc. Travels through literature. Is that the channel? The medieval Sean. Is his name Sean? Anyway. There's a bunch of people reading and enjoying Gerald Murnane, and I did actually really like the first story. It was very strange, though. It was really good, though. But I haven't gone back to him either. But he's waiting for me patiently on my iPad, so I will at some point go back to him. Now let's come to my Jane Austen July reading. So I decided to just participate in the reread of Pride and Prejudice. And what I really kind of am excited to do, what I should do before next week, is I want to read the introductions of my penguins to this one. This is the one I'm reading right now. And not to sound heretical or anything, I just think that because of the nature of the novels and how closely I connected to them when I first read them, or I don't get that much new wonderful things or insights out of rereading them. And I remember just today I was watching a video by Bibliosophie, fantastic new booktuber, and she recommended a book called it's all about what she called her catnip, which is all about rereading or the necessity of rereading. And I'm actually not a big rereader, mainly because I'm such a slow reader, so it's a little bit one and done for me. Plus there's so many other books out there I gotta get to, and I'm slow. And so unless it's something that I want to excerpt or just take with me, like I remember when I was actually studying, people who went to university or have degrees, sometimes you go back and you copy things, you have to reread for that. But since I'm not really doing that anymore, I'm not a scholar of any sort right now. I am only a reader. I don't feel the need to reread, and so I'm enjoying Pride and Prejudice. No, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, oh, this is so amazing. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Like the true Austenites, I don't really think I'm one of them. I think she's very, very good, and she's distinct and unique. She does read rather modern. I mean, I was reading. So the other things I'm reading are, the other thing is a biography by Claire Tomalin. Claire, I think is her name. Claire Tomalin. And that's pretty good. It's the same thing that I always have when I read nonfiction. I'm not being, unless it's Margaret Young, my favorite. I'm not having such a great time reading it, although I'm making it fun, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I won't even bother getting the cover up. I'll put a picture in there. So we're finding out more about her life, and it's a straightforward biography. And until she kind of can sort of be her own person, you get a lot of, well, this is what was done in families of her sort And so she probably did this too. Something it's a little bit like that. And so it does state that in the letters so they're talking right now about what she read. And she read, for example, I think it's Richardson. Is it Richardson who wrote so 18th century novels, the ones I'm familiar with, except for Tristram Shandy. And by familiar, I don't necessarily mean I read a lot of them. I haven't hardly read any of them because they're very, very long. They're long and they're very wordy. It's the same in German. If you read Sophie von la Roche, so the grandmother of the lady I did some research on, she wrote long novels too. They're very wordy. I don't know why the 18th, probably because the way people read in snippets in not like Dickens exactly, but anyway, it's very long. And so this is Samuel Richardson. So she read Richardson, epistolary novels by Richardson. So Pamela, and apparently she really enjoyed A History of Sir Charles Grandison. And it goes into a little bit of the summary of that long book and how you can sort of see connections to her own writing. And that's kind of interesting to see, putting her as much as you can into the context of her times. And that helps make you understand her uniqueness, which, you know, she was just, in a lot of ways, she was kind of ahead of her time, which is, I think, one of the reasons why she's so beloved. To be honest, I kind of I get off the train when it gets into dressing up as Jane Austen or taking tea, sip on more Jane Austen. It's just not my scene, so to speak. I'm just very, very averse to, creative anachronism, and I'm not sure why. I shouldn't be. I don't know. It's something to do with my introversion. So anything about dressing up as the people, I mean, not just Jane Austen, in general. Now I'm talking, the SCA is an actual thing, the Society for Creative Anachronism. And, people who actually sort of, I guess it's going towards LARP and things like that, live action role playing and dressing up, and then, which I guess, so in theory could be a lot of fun, but not for me, not for the likes of me. So yeah, let's see. So I'm reading the biography, and one way I make it fun for myself is because, I am a narcissist in my own way, is so I have a very, very extensive family tree on my ancestry.com because I have a lot of data from my maternal lineage, and most of it is British, Scottish, Irish, Channel Islands. And because it's British, Scottish, Irish, it's basically also almost the whole world because of colonization, all those bad things. Jamaica, and yes, there are people in my family who, I'm the descendant also of slaves. And then, of course, the Antipodes come in there because of the empire, the British Empire, because the one great-grandfather emigrates to Australia, where apparently he ran away with a policeman's wife, goes to New Zealand, sets up shop there, she dies, he marries someone else, and then that's my great-grandmother. Anyway, long story. That's the thing about ancestry. It's all just stories and terrible things happening to people. And of course, if you have any Antipodes in your background, like I have a lot of Australian stuff. I found my first convict, so he was sent out there when he was 17 or 18 and set up shop there, or was let go and then set up shop. So I do have actual convicts in the lineage too. But so my theory of ancestry.com is, if you sort of, I hit the sort of genealogical jackpot because a couple of people married into extremely famous, extremely well-connected families. And so, well, the one big family that I'm related to are the Mackenzies, the Scottish Mackenzies. There's all different branches, I'm sure, but I'm related to a whole bunch of them that ended up in Jamaica. Like my great-great-grandmother was in Jamaica, Georgiana. And then one of the Mackenzies married someone called Byng, B-Y-N-G, and the Bings are big, famous military family. And there was a famous one who was executed on his ship for, I guess, some sort of insubordination, Admiral Byng. And he pops up everywhere. He pops up in the Metro novels and everywhere. And then at some point, one of the Byngs married into an even more well-connected family, the Pagets, P-A-G-E-T. Now, the Pagets, that really is the genealogical lottery, because they're connected to everyone and everyone, including Princess Diana's family. So, what's her last name? I'm blanking on her last name. The Spencers, Diana Spencer, and then going back to, whoever. Lennox. Anyway, all kinds of people. So yes, there was that one fun day when I was able to put the Queen and etc. into my tree. And all of their offspring I'm distantly, actually not even that roundabout, but not that closely either. But then Jane Austen, it's pretty thin, but it is, I have it in my tree. All of her family is in my tree via a sixth cousin. So one of the Byngs married one of the Jolliffes, and the Jolliffes married the Chancellors. These are all big names. A lot of them are on Wikipedia. The Chancellors, there's a lot of Chancellors. Puppy Chancellor is someone who has an Insta page and does stuff. And her mother's, I think, is Anna Chancellor, who was actually an actress in one of the Austen movies or series. I think she played one of the sisters in the Pride and Prejudice, Anna Chancellor. Anyway, through them going back up, I get connected to very, very distantly to the brother, specifically the brother who got farmed out to the rich relatives, Edward Knight, Austen Knight. He takes on their name, Knight. And so that is one of the interesting things about reading the biographies, how the child rearing and how it was sort of pretty normal for the mother to give away all the babies and then bring them back when they were a bit older, or that how they just decide, okay, this one kid can go basically be adopted by this childless couple over there. We don't really mind him leaving our family. I guess that's still pretty normal, not that unnormal, but anyway. So I've had fun putting all of the Austen people into my tree. Mainly as a way to just keep track of them anyway, not because they're connected to me, but now they have them all there. Like her aunt, Philadelphia, who went to India to find a husband, and all this stuff about going beyond the little, some would say, narrow world of what Austen was all about, namely the world of the Navy. Her brother was in the Navy, and her aunt had gone to India and brings back a daughter who marries a Frenchman who gets his head chopped off. I think it hasn't happened yet, but it's about to happen because we're in the 1780s. And so, yeah, it's all there. Her whole life is kind of connected to the world in that sense. And you get hints of that in the novels, but you don't get that much of it. And so that's been fun. And then the other book that I'm probably enjoying the most, because it's my first time and it's one I've really had on my radar for a very long time, is the German novel by Theodor Fontane. So Theodor Fontane, 19th century author who started writing late. He started off as all kinds of things. He was the son of a pharmacist, which always makes me think of Dr. Faustus, because the person writing there is a pharmacist, or pharmacist's son at least. And then he did all kinds of things, and he was also connected to the wars with France in the Prussian. He's very Prussian, so he's from the Prussian area, north. So he's really, his sort of area, and his writing is very connected to this area, is sort of the northeast of Germany, going all over into towns that are now part of Poland because they're too far east, but they were part of Prussia. And he did all kinds of things. He traveled quite a bit, and he wrote about his area in Brandenburg. And then finally he settles down and starts writing his novels when he's quite old, my age, in his late 50s. And he wrote quite a lot of them. And his most famous, as I've mentioned before, is Effie Briest, the kind of German Madame Bovary. And I am reading his first novel, Before the Storm, which is a novel which is an interesting, so it's 600 pages, so pretty long, but it's only about one not even a year. It says novel from the winter 1812 to 1813. So only like less than a year. So it's going to be very diving into, but then it gives you a lot of background. It's sort of, it's all about the family. Like the first chapters have been fun because it's sort of, it's this Prussian nobility, Junker, they call them in German. So from this area, and the family itself is described as, it's just really interesting. And I don't think I'm going to go into it a lot because I'm going to be talking to you about this novel for many weeks, I think. But suffice to say that for this week, what's interesting about the family history, at least, is how the different kind of religious strands, and so they're connected to, they're not what you think when you think of German. They have these other things going on. Specifically, some people they call it Wendland, the Wends. I don't know if they call them Wends. Wendish, and so the Wends, or Wends in German, Wends. W is a V sound in German. It says here, a historical name for Slavs living near the Germanic settlement areas. So they're German, not German. German-speaking Europe during the Middle Ages, the term Wends was interpreted as synonymous with Slavs and sporadically used in literature. But see, these people are very, very German. I'm not saying that they're not German, but they have other things going on. And then people are going to come, and so he's really good at, one thing I do like it was what he's doing is he'll describe a building, like a church or their estate, and sort of do a history of all the different influences and what makes that building unique and why it's unique. And I do have to say, the way he describes the estate and how there's this initial kind of Cain and Abel moment of the Ur brothers having it out, connected to the 30 Years War. So not even that old, but these two brothers, Matthias and Anselmus. Oh no, not that's called Pot. Something with an A name. Maybe it's Anselm? They have it out because it's interesting. Okay, history, tiny bit of history here at the end. So the 30 Years War is all about religion, Catholics, non-Catholics. And so this area is, of course, pretty Protestant. And I think the Swedes are already there, but the other people come in. So the Kaiser's people, Holy Roman Empire people come in. And one of the sons joins their armies of the Holy Roman Empire, and one of them doesn't, stays with the estate. And that's kind of the seed of the conflict that happens. And this might sound really silly, but the way the estate is described and the two brothers duking it out, it's very sort of swashbuckly in a way, you know, the opposite of Jane Austen. It reminded me of Game of Thrones at the beginning. They remind me of the Starks, really. It has this sort of same... This is kind of a reason why I do like fantasy. There's not that much difference between historical fiction and a certain type of fantasy fiction. It's about heroes or feuds or things that happen in the past that you know come down to us in the present. But it was really well done. The writing is really good. It's a little bit borderline kitsch or sentimental. But he does a good job with the characters. So it's almost as if these are certain types of characters. They're either old, so they're allowed to be sentimental. So he sort of, if someone says sort of things that make you roll your eyes, it's because of that person, and he wants you to roll your eyes at them. And he's good at characterization, and he's just a good writer. He's able to get. It's very atmospheric. It's very sort of pulls you along. It's atmospheric, good characters, well written. It's all you could ask for. I mean, in a kind of 19th century historical novel type thing. And I think the characters are going to be really important, the main ones that we're honing in on, which is this family 1812, 1813. So the descendants of the two brothers, well, basically one brother because he killed the other brother. And yeah, I think there will be other characters coming into the play. But I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I do want to get back to it, which is why I will stop this video. It's 24 minutes. I apologize for my chattiness, but that's what you get with the Grimm Reader. Tell me how your reading is going, if you're participating in Jane Austen, if you have any questions. And yeah, I'll probably be putting one other little stationery thing up just for completion reasons. And I will speak to you very soon. I think that's all I have. Oh wait, well, one last thing. I'll just mention my audio. I am still listening to it's called Midnight Tides. I'll put a picture here, by Steven Erikson. It's the 5th big long novel in the Malazan Empire, and at some point I keep thinking I will kind of give you a little bit more of an in-depth overview of what's happening, but let's just say right now that stuff is happening. A lot of stuff is happening. And it's quite good, and I'll leave it at that for this week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think so. Everything's good. I will see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you all for watching.